Hello, I am back again with more notes on House of Leaves. This time I am working through Chapter 5 here, and as always we begin with the epigraph, and this one is from a book called The Guide by Narayan. And this is an interesting book, especially in relation to House of Leaves. It's about a tour guide slash prisoner who gets mistaken for a swami, a spirit guide, and he actually ends up becoming the swami, lives in an abandoned temple, and he only gains his identity through the perception of others. Interesting in many ways. So we have someone who's supposed to guide us through things, but he's also a fake. But through becoming that fake, he becomes real. The abandoned temple is also interesting. The house is kind of abandoned. And this idea that he only gains his identity through the perception of others is like, who is given identity through our perception of them in House of Leaves, or through the perception of other people. So like, Navidson's giving his identity through Zampano through Johnny, and then we could argue other layers. Those are the most obvious ones. Okay. Moving down the page, we get an error, and as we learned in Chapter 4, errors are important. And we get this phrase, tears her to Pisces. And this same mistake is made on page 599 in the Pelafina letters, tore me to Pisces. I thought that was quite interesting. I looked up Pisces is obviously referring to an astrological sign between the dates of February 19th to March 20th. So I was trying to figure out what happened in between those dates. I didn't really find anything between those dates in either in any of the appendices. Let's just say that. But we do get a reference on page 418 here, that Navidson, all of which begins to explain why in February and March, Pisces season, Navidson began to order high-speed film, magnesium flares, powerful flashes, and even arranged for a thermal video camera. So we know during Pisces season, February to March, is when Navidson begins his exploration of the house. And what is it going to do? It's going to tear things to pieces. Not Pisces. Pieces. Here again we get, in both cases, unfulfilled love results in the total negation of Echo's body and the near negation of her voice. And we learn Karen has develops as a child aphonia, so the negation of her voice there. And the negation of her body, we also learn that she eventually develops cancer. Sorry for the camera moving there. Yeah, so that's interesting idea of Karen as Echo. Okay. Page 42 here we get a reference to this fellow, Pierre Menard. Pierre Menard is not a real person. He is from a character from a short story by Borges called Pierre Menard, author of The Quixote. And it's written in the form of a review or a literary critical piece about Pierre Menard, a fictional, eccentric 20th century French writer and polymath. It begins with a brief introduction and a listing of Menard's work. Borges' review describes Menard's efforts to go beyond a mere translation of Don Quixote by immersing himself so thoroughly in the work as to be able to actually recreate it line for line in the original 17th century Spanish. Thus, Pierre Menard is often used to raise questions and discussions about the nature of authorship, appropriation, and interpretation that was taken from Wikipedia. So this idea that he is recreating something, and we're getting a recreation of the Navidson record here. yeah, and as I said before, raise question about the nature of authorship and interpretation. So, like, who is the real author of House of Leaves? And also in footnote 51, can't read which footnote we're on here. 49, so footnote 51 is over here. I didn't highlight it, unfortunately. Oh, we are told that, Anthony Bonner translated, rather, Pierre Menard, not the story by Borges. Okay, 43 here, we get a reference to the Amoretic Guide. And this is an interesting phrase. So this is the idea of the blind leading someone. And amoretic means a total loss of vision. And we also got that word in a previous chapter as well. That links the idea of Johnny to Zampano, because they use these strange, not everyday words. And I guess here too, this very obvious point out that HoL and HoL are just one letter apart. And the idea of the hallway maybe as manifestation of hell. Okay, so on to page 44. Here. I don't know why I didn't write this in my notes. I should have written this. Amori, Mori, Ori, and finally Ray. We do get more references to gold. I'm going to come back to that when the actual other references pop up, though. This note belongs on this page. We're going to talk about Wordsworth, and this phrase, stern daughter of the voice of God. This is from a poem called Ode to Duty. And it's interesting, there's an epigraph for this poem. I'm not going to read the Latin because I won't pronounce it right. I'll read the translation of the Latin. And it says, I am no longer good through deliberate intent, but by long habit have reached a point where I am not only able to do right, but unable to do anything but what is right. From the Seneca letters. I thought that was interesting. Some key lines from the poem are, when empty terrors overawe, as in AWE, overawe. So like the idea of the emptiness of the hallway and the terror within it. And then this phrase as well, when love is an unerring light. And at the end, we see like a physical manifestation of that. Navidson sees the light, and Karen's at the other end. This idea of the story being about love. Over here, we get a reference to the Hebrew davar and logos. The davar, it should actually be dabar. And it's a word used in Old Testament, and it means the oral wisdom of the existence of God. And then logos, I wrote down here science, but it's also has to do with religion as well. Logos are the words used in the New Testament. So we have here maybe a reference to John chapter 1 verse 1 in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, keep that in mind as I flip over to page 390 here, where Navidson is writing a letter and says, God's a house, our house is God. Interesting idea there, right? So there's also the theory that the book is the house. So if the Word was God and the house is God, then the house is the words. I hope that logic in that sentence made sense there. Yeah, so this is the house made of words, the house made of leaves of paper, the house of leaves is the book. Okay, we're on this page. We have a reference to On the Power of Sound by William Wordsworth. I'm going to read the full poem of the one that's quoted here. Let me just bring it up here. So it's actually like a bunch of poems, and I'll link them down below if you want to read through all of them, but I think just this one is mostly significant. Oh, and the next one too. There's so much, I could read this whole thing and I find significance in it everywhere. So I'm just going to read Cantos 3 and 4 for you here. Ye voices and ye shadows, and images of voice, to hound and horn, from rocky steep and rock-bestudded meadows, flung back, and in the and in the sky's blue caves reborn, on with your pastime till the church tower bells. A greeting give of measured glee, and milder echoes from their cells repeat the bridal symphony. Then o'er far earlier let us rove, where mists are breaking up or gone, and from aloft look down into a cove besprinkled with a careless choir, happy milkmaids one by one, scattering a ditty each to her desire, a liquid concert matchless by nice art, a stream as if from one full heart. So we are getting this idea of the house as a cave. We get a lot of references later on as well to caves and mountains and the different explorations there. But I also want to read the Cantos 4, which comes after this one. Blessed be the song that brightens the blind man's gloom, exalts the veteran's mirth, unscorned the peasant's whistling breath that lightens his duteous toil of furying the green earth. For the tired slave song lifts the languid oar, and bids it aptly fall with chime that beautifies the farthest shore, and mitigates the harshest clime. Yon pilgrims see, and lagging foul they move, but soon the appointed way a choral Ave Maria shall beguile, and to their hope the distant shrine glisten with a livelier ray, nor friendless he the prisoner of the mine, who with wellspring of his own clear breast can draw and sing his griefs to rest. So we got this idea of this song that brightens a blind man's gloom, the blind man being Zampano. He's also a veteran, so I just thought that was interesting. There's some more interesting lines. I'm not going to go through and read all the poems. This one in particular stuck out. Intricate labyrinth, more dread for thought to enter than oracular cave, strict passage through which sighs are brought, and whispers for the heart their slave, and shrieks that revel in abuse of shivering flesh. That reference to labyrinths and dread, and getting through it. I thought that really stuck out. Another one, no, though earth be death, and vanish through the heavens dissolve, her stay is in the word that shall not pass away. So this idea of a person being dead, though earth be dust, person's dead in the earth, and vanish, the way she's staying is in the word. So is that Pelafina. Again, this idea of coming back to life through words. I just thought that was interesting. It's well worth it to go through and read all the poems. It would take like an hour to read it all out loud. I think it's quite long. We're going to move on to page 46. And from the footnote down here, we have a reference to this book. Not all references here are real, by the way, but some of them are real, and this is one that is. It's called No One May Ever Have the Same Knowledge Again Letters to Mount Wilson Observatory. And this was actually a collection of letters given to the observatory. And I'm just going to read this. I haven't read the letters. I read a review on the book. So I'm just going to read this quote from the review that I think is relevant. He demonstrates that the histories written by amateur crackpots and paranoid schizophrenics, that word schizophrenia is very prevalent in House of Leaves. I think it's probably well acknowledged that Pelafina had schizophrenia, possibly Johnny as well. So, in paranoid schizophrenics, the ill-informed and the delusional may have value beyond the picturesque. He admires the Mount Wilson correspondents for their willingness to confront the biggest questions and for the raw individuality of their conclusions, untarnished as they are by standardized terminology or shared belief. The letters serve as vivid examples of some of the ways in which any fact, once it arrives in the public domain, inevitably becomes the subject of endless and ungoverned reinterpretation. But they are emotional documents too, and this quality only gains in intensity by contrast with the impersonal mechanics of serious astronomy. Many of the letters hint at lives as strange and noble as anything to be found in deep space. I have gone through frightful things, writes one Alice May Williams. Still, I go through it, and I am beginning to get knowledge. I think that's just interesting. Like, this is our own collection of letters, and we have to go through and come up with the facts. We are ungoverned in our reinterpretation of it, but it's also, we have an emotional connection to the book, and we are determining emotional things from the book as well. And we have to go through it and begin to get knowledge of the house. 47 down here, we have this reference to the blind must rely on the feeble light of fingertips and the painful shape of a cracked shin. Again, the shin is close to the foot, so I'm just referencing again to the book, the hallway, the monster in the hallway, the lack of love hurting people's feet. Okay, page 48. Here, let me move my note. My own, this is Johnny's talking, or Johnny's writing. My own scars drawn long ago, over 2 decades ago, and with more than a claw. We know that Johnny at this point has scars on his arms, and I wonder if maybe like the claw could be a reference to Pelafina's hands. We are told that she has long fingernails, and we know that, I think, anyways, what I got from the book is that she was the one who caused the scars on Johnny's arms. How exactly, we don't know, but she has hurt him. And then we get a reference to Samuel O'Reilly. Just going to put this note up here. He actually patented the first electric tattoo machine in 1891. Johnny is trying to become a tattoo artist, so I thought that was interesting. Another interesting thing is that Samuel O'Reilly, he died because he fell while he was trying to paint his house. I just thought that was an interesting bit of trivia. Down here we get a reference to other loss, and it is capitalized there. Could it perhaps also mean mother loss or loss of mother? And then right down here we get the coming of the great whale. Could this be a possible reference to the whale stow letters, or the whale's toe? Again, with the feet. With the feet, Mark. What is your problem with the feet? Here's the reference I was referring to back on these pages with Amore, More, Ore, and Ray. Spanish gold. Which is, Ore is an echo of Amore, which is love. And we also get a reference to this on page 626. Yep. 626. Pelafina's Doloro. All words for gold. So Spanish gold. Another reference to his mother there. And then we get this reference, X marks the spot, unable to proceed. And if we look at page 582, this is it here, we get one of the pictures in the appendices, and this is actually a guide to some of the footnotes. So you see some of these weird symbols popping up in the footnotes, and if you look closely, it'll tell you what it means. And so X means unable to proceed. Page 49 over here, we get this reference to a miscreated changeling. And I'm referencing again Polyphena's letters. Page 594, where she says, changeling. Did your co-ed teach you that one? So now it's just like, did Polyphena read Johnny's notes on House of Leaves? Did she write them herself? Like, what? WTF, right? Like, what's going on here now? One of the first references there to some interesting timeline stuff, maybe. And changeling is also an interesting thing because later on in the story we get the story of an infant's death, and it's speculated that it might have been Johnny's death at birth. Who knows? And this idea of a changeling, in mythology, it was a substitute left by supernatural being when they kidnapped a human being. So they'd kidnap a child, and they'd leave a changeling which could look like that child, but wasn't that child. So I thought that was interesting. Then we get a reference to an only son. That could possibly be referring to, like, that's obviously referring to Johnny as the only son of Polyphena, but it could also relate back to religion. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only son as a sacrifice. So was Johnny actually dead? So we get into this question again of Johnny's identity. Is he dead? Is he alive? What's going on with Johnny? And then we get a reference here to reminiscent of another silver shape, so removed and yet so dear, kept on a cold gold chain. And that could be a reference to the necklace that his mother left him. You get on page 351 over here. I often thought about the locket dangling from our neck, and then we get told that he has it here and he's contemplating selling it. He does eventually sell it, but this is where we get a reference to that necklace that he inherited from his mother. So there are a lot of notes, because as we get, you'll see as we get further on that the notes and the references get much more. There's more references, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just up here we have this H all equal infinity. So HoL equals affinity. The hall is endless. The hallway is endless. And then down here we get the fragile collarbone tracing a shadow of blank. I can't write the word. And the collarbone, another word for that is clavicle, from the Latin clavis, which means key. And we get some references to keys later on, which will bring us to page 51 here, where we see these colors mentioned: cinnabar, lemon, celadon, indigo. So cinnabar is a shade of red, lemon is a shade of yellow, celadon is a shade of green, indigo is a shade of blue. Page 61, Tom has 4 keys: red, yellow, green, blue. Yeah. There's that. And then just this reference to someone telling Johnny to take up typing. And it's interesting because his font is the typewriter font. Okay. On page 53, we get a reference to the rabbit tattoo. This is Thumper, who he ends up calling Thumper. And I thought it was interesting. This white rabbit, he associates it with Thumper from Bambi. There's that reference to Bambi. I think he mentions that he watched Bambi as well earlier on. So there's a reference to that obvious scene of Bambi's mother dying and Bambi having to make it on his own. I also thought it could possibly be a reference to like Alice in Wonderland, follow the white rabbit. We get that saying in The Matrix as well. This idea of a different reality. So both like The Matrix and Wonderland you have to enter through a door and get there to a different reality. Like the house, the hallway is a different reality. Page 54, we get this phrase, an icon or idol, and I thought he probably means idol, I-D-O-L, instead of idol, I-D-Y-L-L. I-D-Y-L-L, idol, means pastoral or rural simplicity, especially in poetry, music, art. And it's from the Middle English, yiddle, Y-D-E-L, which means empty. So I thought that was an interesting word to use there. The house, the hallway, being empty of things. Another Doctor Who reference, its interior dimensions are greater than an exterior one. They're on the inside. I just like Doctor Who, so I find the references there everywhere. It's not. I know it's not an actual reference to Doctor Who, but just have fun with it. On page 54, we get a reference to Oliver North annulled conviction, and this actually gives us a timeline. So Karen's watching this on TV. This happened in 1991, or early 90s. So Oliver North he was a Vietnam War vet, which I thought was interesting because the Indochina War that I think Zampano fought in was like the precursor to the Vietnam War that most Americans are probably familiar with. So Oliver North was involved in the Iran-Contra affair, which was the illegal sales of weapons to Iran to encourage the release of American hostages, and then they used that money to fund the Contra rebel groups in Nicaragua. Just looking at random people and telling you what they are. Okay. These references begin here. Kate Chopin, Sylvia Plath, Toni Morrison. These are important because they are feminist authors. But we get a reference to Autobiography of a Schizophrenic Girl, the true story of Renee. And we know that schizophrenia is a huge point, as I already said, in House of Leaves. And this is a real book. I haven't read it, but I'm going to read the description. This is the astonishing memoir of a young girl called Only Renee, whose descent into schizophrenia began at the age of 5. Written with a diamond-sharp precision that lends it an eerie power, it tells the story of Renee's long sojourn in what she calls the land of enlightenment, or the country of Tibet, and her gradual painstaking return to wonderful reality. And she called her experiences unreality. So I thought this was interesting, maybe as thinking of the hallway as an exploration of schizophrenia, as this unheimlich, unreality type idea. Another book mentioned up here as well, Reviving Ophelia by Mary Pfeiffer, is another real book. It has been described as a call to arms, and it highlights the increased levels of sexism and violence that affect young females. This could have been a book that could have been helpful to Karen. And in a section of the book on mothers and daughters, there is a section about a mother worrying about her daughter's truancy. As I always have these big reaches and these big stretches, but Johnny is known also for his truancy, right? And just this note here says, was the hallway following Karen? Did she forget her previous encounter with it? She's afraid of dark, enclosed spaces, the windowless and unknown, over here. And this idea of intimacy, like getting close to someone and losing personal space. This idea of another link to love. So we have some words down here. Aphonia, loss of the ability to vocalize. We will come across that word again. And then the Pyrrhic prize. So pyrite is fool's gold. So like a prize that's not real. So again, this idea of unreality, fakeness. In footnote 69, we get a reference to these people, Steve Sokol and Julia Carter. They are not real, and this book isn't real, but Steve Carter and Julia Sokol are real, and they wrote a book not called Women Who Can't Love, but Men Who Can't Love. So I thought that was interesting, just a little flip there. Okay. Page 61. As I said again, we have the keys that I already talked about. But then we also have this reference to a misspelling of key, the red Kai, K-Y-E. And K-Y-E, Kai, is how I'm going to pronounce it. I don't know if that's correct, but that's how I'm going to say it. Kai is plural for cow in Middle English, and we have a lot of references to Middle English in the book, especially to the Battle of Maladon, which was a poem written in Middle English. So Danilevsky, whoever wrote the book, is familiar with Middle English. So Kai in Middle English is the plural for cow. And here again we have a reference to Judaism that I talked about in chapter 4. We're going to get a lot of references to Judaism. The red cow ritual is written in the book of Numbers in the Bible. And the red cow ritual is used to purify those who have touched a corpse. It's about the impurity of the dead. I just thought that was interesting, because we have a lot of questions of who's alive, who's dead. So who's been touching the dead bodies here in House of Leaves and needs to go through this red Kai ritual? Multiple people, because that's the plural for cow. Again, I'm not coming up with full theories here. I'm just pointing out references that I've noticed. Page 62, we get this book referenced here. Erica Young's Fear of Flying. And one thing that I hear a lot of people complaining about in reference to reading House of Leaves is reading all about Johnny's countless sexual escapades. And this book actually has a term in it called zipless fuck. The zipless fuck is absolutely pure. It is free of ulterior motives. There's no power game. The man is not taking and the woman is not giving. No one is attempting to cuckold a husband or humiliate a wife. No one is trying to prove anything or get anything out of anyone. The zipless fuck is the purest thing there is, and it is rarer than the unicorn, and I have never had one. So, like, we've seen Johnny trying to experience this, but he eventually stops, and that's when he comes to certain realizations, we could argue. Yeah, and then here we have a book that's not real, Broken Daisy Chains, and I was wondering if this was perhaps a reference to Daisy. We've seen before that she has scabs on her wrists. She was playing with some scissors, and maybe some things happened. Who knows? 63 here. We have, you want to see a dark room? I'll show you a dark room, which is Navidson saying this to Karen, or not to Karen, to the blank person, in a dark room, in reference to, like, photography is where you develop photographs. The hallway is also a dark room, and we could argue that that is where Navidson, I don't know, how do you pronounce that? I say Navidson. Navidson needs to develop in this dark room himself. Another reference to Navidson's sore feet here, again. Okay. Page 64. I already have a note here. Do a separate video on images in this footnote. Because there are 776 real people mentioned here. But I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to go through them in a different video. Instead, let me go back to my notes here. I'm going to talk about something else. Codes. There are a lot of codes in this book. And if you take the first letter of each surname in this long list of authors, you get a phrase. I'll show you the phrase here. A long list of visionaries. She said memories mean all, but they are all dead. Who you? I wait now for only the wind. I thought maybe the wind could be a reference to Donnie. Now, Donnie is who we are told is Johnny's father, and he was a pilot. So I think of the wind and pilots. And Pelafina also mentions the word wind on page 599. Just trying to find that page here. 599. Like Donnie, you were too born with the wind under your wings. So someone's just waiting for the wind. Who could that possibly be? We are told... Oh, that didn't... Sorry. I'm not going to edit it. It's too long. We are told that the important names here are Brassai, Speen, Bush, and Link. So I will talk about them here. So Brassai, he wrote a biography of Arthur Miller, who he claimed to be his friend, but Miller had this to say: Fred Pearls and I steer shy of him, referring to Brassai. He bored us. Miller added that the biography Brassai had written on him was typically padded, full of factual errors, full of suppositions, rumors, documents he filched which are largely false or give a false impression. So this idea of someone who doesn't know someone very well writing a biography of them, and doing so with lots of errors, lots of rumors, lots of documents or references to documents, to give a false impression. I'll let you come to your own conclusions for that. The next person we get is O. Winston Link. Interesting, he pioneered night photography, so we get that darkness, that reference to photography. Thought that was interesting. And Speen is not a real person. Yeah. I think we're also told that Bush is an important name as well. Yeah, Andrew Bush, Bonnetstown specifically. So he did a 4-year investigation of Bonnetstown Hall, which was a deteriorating 18th century estate near Kilkenny, Ireland. Kilkenny, we get a reference to that as well before. Kilkenny disappeared. which, do we get that before or is that coming after? There's a limerick about Kilkenny disappeared, and it's a reference to cats. So Kilkenny is referenced twice, arguably. And this photographic exploration focused on how, in the artist's words, the manor house itself disclosed varying degrees of intimacy and privacy. So I'll link some stuff to their photographs down below, and as I said, I'll do a separate video on all the different images referenced in here. Okay, so let's skip over that now, and we're on page 69 here. We get a reference to Margaretha Gertrudia Zelle, which is the birth name of Matahari, and she was known to be a beautiful exotic dancer who used her powers of seduction as a spy. She was convicted and condemned because the French army needed a scapegoat, and the files used to secure her conviction, they said, contained falsifications. And her son actually died of syphilis before she did. So we have this reference to a dying son, false documentations, and a woman being used as a scapegoat. And we're almost done this chapter. It is a long one, sorry. We have this phrase up here, my tendency to drift and moither. Moither is an interesting word. It means to bother or bewilder or to talk in a rambling and confused manner, which I guess we can argue Johnny does. It's also a similar word to mother. And then that's important because we also get reference down here to I start filling caps with purple. And I'll keep reading here. I start filling caps with purple, concentrating on its texture, the strange hue, imagining I can actually observe the rapid pulse of its bandwidth. These are stupid thoughts, and as if to confirm that sentiment, darkness pushes in on me. Extremely long fingers. And then cold hands of the dead. And then we get extremely long fingers referenced up here. So purple is associated with Pelafina. We're told that she has purple fingernails on page 630. I had long, ridiculous purple nails. And if you'll notice, every time purple is mentioned, Johnny has a panic attack. I think that's what's happening to him here. Darkness starts to come in. He starts to panic. The long fingers had hurt Johnny. There's the possibility that Pelafina had strangled him with her fingers, right? Or that she had clawed him, as we saw just a few pages before. On page 71 here, we get this weird grouping of words, known some call is eram, which is a Latin phrase, non sum qualis eram, I am not as I was, and we get that referenced in Pelafina correctly on page 602, non sum qualis eram, this idea that the house, that's my cat running around, and it's kind of creepy when you're talking about House of Leaves, because there's a lot of cats in House of Leaves. Anyways, non sum qualis eram, I am not what I once was. Right. And then we get this reference to another Maladin, or no Maldon, not Maladin, but Maldon. And this is also referenced on page 601. Move this phrase down here, where we get this phrase. This is Old English here. I'll talk about that when I get there. But the Battle of Maldon is what is quoted there. The Maldon poem started as an oral story, then was written down, but then it was lost in a fire. A previous transcript was found with the first and last pages missing. It was then lost again, and then found in the Bodleian library in the 1930s, which is quite interesting. I am going to talk about this quote that she has here. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because, yeah. But the translation is, heart must be braver, courage the bolder, mood the stouter, as our strength grows less. And there's some discussion about the meaning of a word that's, yeah. It's not written, it's written in the Old English here, but the word is offramod, which literally means overheart, or having too much heart. It could mean either pride or an excess of courage. Another viewpoint, most notably held by J.R.R. Tolkien, is that the poem is an elegy on a terrible loss, and that the monastic author pinpoints the cause of the defeat in the commander's sin of pride, a viewpoint bolstered by the fact that offramod is, in every other attested instance, used to describe Satan's pride. So we get reference to Satan, to hell, to having too much pride, an excess of courage, who's someone that has excess of courage. In the book, I'd argue that could be Holloway, and maybe that is his downfall. Okay, page 72. Johnny has stubbed his toe. I've talked about that before, but here we go. My face has been splattered with purple, as have my arms. Again, the reference to Johnny's arms being hurt by his mother in some way. Also, we have Johnny losing the floor. The floor is black, and this actually happens with Navidson. So previously, the floor was the only thing that Navidson could rely upon when he entered the hallway, but now the floor has fallen out from Johnny, and Johnny only exists in contrast to Navidson. His actions mirror Navidson's, and also they both have problems with their feet at this point now. He's stubbed his toe. Yeah, and then we have footnote 78 down here. Though Mr. Truan's sides may often seem impenetrable, they are not without rhyme or reason. And I think this is important because a lot of people complain about Johnny's footnotes, but I think it's important to read Johnny's footnotes because they act as a contrast, as a foil to Navidson. I also noted here that Johnny's margins are much smaller than the margins when we get Navidson's story. So I thought it might be interesting maybe that, Johnny's story has less room for interpretation, less room to write your notes in it, as opposed to Navidson's story. Okay, thank you for coming along with me in that long video. And let me know what you think about chapter 5. Was that? Yep, chapter 5. And thank you for watching.